Story 1. The Mirror in the Bathroom. My school, an old middle school, had 3 main bathrooms. 2 of them were clean, always well kept. But there was one bathroom at the far end of the school grounds, like a forgotten part of the building. This bathroom was always filthy, with a pungent odor that filled the air, and none of us dared to go near it. It had 6 stalls, but only 3 were usable, while the other 3 had broken doors, rusted hinges, and were abandoned. I remember the feeling I had every time I passed by, not daring to look into that bathroom. One day, while sitting in class with my friends, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my stomach. With no other choice, I had to go to that filthy bathroom because it was the nearest. The stench made it hard to breathe, but I couldn't hold it any longer. I quickly tried to finish my business without touching anything that might make me sick. But something strange happened when I stood in front of the mirror in that bathroom. As I entered the bathroom, the space was dark and cold, with only a dim light flickering from a single bulb. I hurried into the least dirty stall, hoping to finish quickly. After I was done, I stepped out and walked to the sink. The foul smell still lingered in the air, but I tried not to focus on it. When I stood in front of the mirror, I saw my reflection, but suddenly, I heard a tapping sound. The light tap echoed from somewhere. I paused, turned around, but saw no one. I frowned, turned off the tap, and started drying my hands. Then, the tapping came again, this time louder. I turned back to the mirror, nervous. In that brief moment, I saw a pale, bony hand reaching out from behind the stall door. The fingers tapped on the door and then disappeared as I turned around. My heart raced, unable to believe what I had just seen. I took a deep breath and continued drying my hands, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But when I looked up again at the mirror, I saw something unbelievable. My reflection no longer looked like me. There was a grin, wide as could be, one that could never belong to me. My eyes widened, and I froze, unable to move, only able to stare in horror at my reflection, too scared to breathe. Suddenly, the tapping came again, louder this time, as if urging me on. I jumped, but when I turned back to the mirror, my reflection waved, as if calling me. Unable to bear it anymore, I quickly threw down the paper towel and ran as fast as I could. My body was trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. I bolted out of the bathroom and back to class, too scared to look back. When I told my friends, they just laughed and said I had imagined it all. But I knew what I had seen wasn't a figment of my imagination. To this day, I cannot forget that image, the mirror, the smile, and the bony hand. I never dared to go back into that bathroom again. And to this day, the mirror remains an unsettling memory in my mind. Story 2. The Men Who Followed Me. I've always been strong, never afraid of any challenge. Strange or scary things have never made me tremble. But there was one time, when I was a first-year university student, that I experienced something that completely changed my perspective on real-world danger. One Friday, I needed to withdraw money before the bank closed. Unfortunately, I forgot about it and had to go out late in the afternoon. I locked my apartment and walked to my car. As I left the building corridor and stepped outside, a small truck slowly stopped near me. Inside the truck were two men, one muscular and the other a thin, glasses-wearing man. They started making crude comments, making me feel extremely uncomfortable. But when I looked into their eyes, an uneasy feeling suddenly surged within me. My stomach churned as a warning sign, telling me something was wrong. I realized I was in a very dangerous situation. The muscular man opened the truck door and called me over, telling me I was beautiful and asking me to come talk to them in the car. I didn't want to get any closer. Didn't want them to know what kind of car I drove. And especially didn't want to go back to my apartment because if they figured out where I lived, I wouldn't be able to escape. I decided to keep walking toward the office building, hoping to find safety among other people. But they kept following me, continuing with their suggestive remarks. The farther I walked, the more it felt like I was being hunted. An indescribable tension kept building up inside me. As I neared the office, the thin man started pulling out a bag from the backseat of the truck. It was filled with shoes. Shoes. Hundreds of shoes. Children's shoes. Women's high heels. Men's shoes. I looked at these shoes and felt a chill run down my spine. I realized these weren't just ordinary shoes. The owners of them could be the victims they had kidnapped. My body went numb, and a terrifying sensation flooded over me. I couldn't take it any longer. I screamed and turned to run toward the office, where I found safety. They chased me for a short distance, but I managed to get inside and lock the door. I quickly called the police, and they arrived shortly after. Although I couldn't be sure if those shoes really belonged to kidnapped victims, I decided never to go back to that apartment. A few days later, I saw that truck parked outside my building again. I couldn't believe my eyes. They hadn't given up. I quickly moved out and never returned, hoping those men would be caught. But every time I remember those shoes, I can't help but wonder, were they really the belongings of people who had mysteriously disappeared? Story 3. The Strange Bus Ride. It was a late night, around midnight, when I boarded a bus to go to my grandmother's house. I had spent the entire day trying to find a bus, but all the routes were crowded. Finally, I managed to catch a ride, but there were only a few people on the bus. The driver, the conductor who collected fares, a couple sitting together, and an elderly woman sitting quietly at the back. The atmosphere inside the bus was cold, silent, like a world detached from the noise outside. The bus passed through empty streets, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled within me for no apparent reason. As the bus passed by a mental hospital, suddenly, a woman in a hospital gown appeared at the side of the road, waving her hand to signal. She had a shaved head and a pale face, her eyes hollow and deep like a ghost. The bus came to a halt right next to her, and everyone inside felt a sense of unease. I felt a cold breeze suddenly blow through the window, causing me to shiver. Despite seeing that the woman seemed unusual, the driver opened the door. But for some reason, he suddenly pressed the accelerator, speeding up and leaving her behind. Without any explanation, he just stared at the rearview mirror, his face filled with fear that he couldn't hide. A chilling feeling suddenly engulfed the space inside the bus. Curious, asked the driver, "Why didn't you let her on the bus?" The driver hesitated, his voice trembling. "She's not a normal woman. She is something else." His answer made me even more confused. But before I could think more, I turned my gaze to the rearview mirror. What I saw made me unable to believe my eyes. The woman was no longer standing there. She had started running after the bus, but not like a normal person. She was moving with an unimaginable speed, so fast that I couldn't make out her face. But I could see her dress was covered in blood, with fresh blood splattering with each step she took. She looked like a shadow, her eyes pitch black and lifeless. "Faster. She's almost catching up," the driver yelled, his voice full of panic. I could feel the tension in the air. The people in the bus started to breathe heavily, exchanging worried glances, but no one dared to speak. Suddenly, I heard a strange sound. The woman suddenly leapt up from outside the window. A bizarre jump, as if she wasn't human. She launched herself into the bus, her eyes wide open, her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. Her every step froze me in place. With a powerful leap, she landed inside the bus, standing right in front of me. That was the moment I would never forget. Her face was bruised, covered in grotesque wounds, and her sharp teeth were bared like a predator. Her mouth stretched into a wide, crazed grin. Her pitch black, lifeless eyes locked onto mine, making my heart stop. The people on the bus started screaming, panicking. A woman sitting near the door threw her purse at the woman, but it had no effect. The woman remained standing, her smile twisted. Everyone in the bus was horrified. Some bowed their heads. Others looked out the window, too scared to look back. A few people stood up, but no one dared to approach her. I was paralyzed, unable to move. Finally, she was struck by a strong blow that caused her to fall out of the bus. But when I looked through the window, I saw her get up, staring at me and grinning maniacally. I could definitely feel her gaze. An intense, defiant look, as if she were saying she wouldn't let go. The bus finally reached the station. and everyone hurried off. They quickly paid and ran out, not daring to look back at the bus. I quickly got off and went into a nearby 7-Eleven store to buy some snacks to calm myself. When I reached the counter, a store clerk asked me, "Are you okay?" "Yes. I'm fine. I just encountered a crazy woman on the bus ride," I replied. But what he said in response sent chills down my spine. "Oh. I know. She had cancer and had to shave her head." After that, she kept laughing crazily, hurting herself and threatening to kill others. That's why her family had her committed to a mental hospital. But just the week after, she escaped the hospital and was hit by a bus and died. I was stunned, goosebumps crawling over me as I listened to him. I asked if he remembered the bus route. For privacy reasons, he said he couldn't mention the bus number. But then he added, "I do remember. But for security reasons, I can't tell you." I thanked him, took my change, but as I turned to leave, my eyes met the sight of a bus parked nearby. A wave of fear spread throughout my body. I realized that it was the very bus I had just been on. But what made it even harder to breathe was, that was the same bus that had hit and killed that woman. Story 4. The Clown Intruder. Everything happened when I was 13. My parents had a business trip to Los Angeles, so I had to stay home alone. My dad gave me a bank card so I could buy anything I wanted. At that time, I felt excited about being home alone and didn't feel scared, as I was used to it. Besides, my parents' trip was only for 3 days. Not too long for me. The news reported that this was the time when a group of clown intruders did strange things in neighborhoods. But they never came to our hillside area because it was quiet, with few people passing by, especially near a forest. My house had a low fence, and anyone could easily climb over and look inside. My family didn't think much about it, as the area we lived in was very safe. It was around 6 p.m., and it was already dark because of the winter. My house had a glass room at the back, which we called the greenhouse. It led directly to the garden and was right next to the kitchen. I felt hungry, so I went to the fridge to grab some snacks and returned to the living room to continue watching TV. The roof was made of tempered glass, so any sound falling on it could be clearly heard, even the smallest drop of water. That night, it rained heavily, and I couldn't hear any sounds other than the rain falling on the roof. A few minutes later, I felt sleepy, so I decided to go upstairs to bed, preparing to check my phone and scroll through Facebook. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise from downstairs. It really startled me. Although scared, I decided to go down the stairs to check because I thought nothing would happen. I stepped out of my room, down the stairs, and looked into the hallway. The whole area was pitch black, but I knew someone was standing there. I saw a shadowy figure in black, So I quickly went back to my room, trying not to make any noise. Shortly after, I heard footsteps moving around the living room. I immediately whispered to the police, telling them I needed urgent help as soon as possible. Suddenly, I sneezed in panic and ran into the bathroom, the only room that had a lock. As I ran in, the man quickly came upstairs, trying to open the door. I tried not to cry and kept calm. On the bathroom door, there was a small frosted glass window, but I could still see everything outside, even if it was just blurry. I could clearly see that the man had green hair, no nose, wore very strange clothes, and was holding a large knife. With no other option, I quickly opened the large bathroom window and jumped out. I slid off the glass roof and fell onto the concrete ground. But I didn't feel any pain because fear had completely overtaken me. I quickly ran to the fence and heard the sound of police cars. They entered my house shortly after and caught the man. I felt very scared and shaky, but I was relieved that the ordeal was over. The police car contacted my parents, and they rushed home to meet me and confirmed that I was safe. From then on, I never stayed home alone again. The crazy man in the strange outfit was sentenced to several years in prison for child molestation and attempted murder. Story 5. The Knocking in the Attic. I signed the contract for the 2-story wooden house on the outskirts of H1 misty October afternoon, when thin fog draped the cobblestone roads. The path to the house wound through old pine trees, the wind sighing softly like a hidden breath. The former owner, an emaciated elderly woman with hair so white it was almost transparent, handed me the keys. Her clouded eyes held an indescribable glint as she said only, "Don't bother with the attic. There's nothing there. Just leave it be." I assumed it was nothing more than an old woman's superstition. The attic lock was rusted, paint flaking in scabs, as if no one had touched it in years. The first week felt like paradise. By day, mild sunshine mixed the scent of pine wood with damp autumn leaves. By night, only the tick of the wall clock and a gentle chill kept me company. I fell into a routine of brewing tea and reading beneath the warm glow of a lamp. But on the 7th night, at 1 a.m., came a slow thud from the bedroom ceiling. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. I woke with a jolt, heart pounding, and tried to reassure myself. Perhaps a squirrel or mice. The next night the sound returned, longer, rhythmic, then stopped directly above my bed. In the stillness I heard a hoarse, dragging breath, like lungs pulling in air through grit. I couldn't stand it. Gripping a flashlight, hands trembling, I climbed the ladder. The padlock was already undone. I swear I hadn't touched it. The attic door gaped a narrow crack. Darkness thick as tar. The smell of long damp timber seeping out. I swept the beam across, only drifting dust. A few cardboard boxes. Cobwebs quivering. No footprints. No sound. As I reached to pull the door shut, an icy draft brushed the back of my neck, and a whisper rasped right beside my ear. Unmistakably clear. "Don't close the door." I spun around. The stairs were empty. Next morning I hired a locksmith, replaced the lock, and added an interior latch. I even installed a security camera in the living room, thinking I'd finally rest easy. But that night, at 2:12 a.m., my phone lit up despite being powered off. On the screen appeared a 7-second recording. Slow footsteps and a low, gravelly voice. "I told you not to close the door." The following day I came home to find the attic door ajar, though I had locked it tight that morning. My keys were still in my coat pocket. On the thick dust of the floor stretched a line of long, narrow footprints. I wiped them away. Yet the next morning they reappeared, perfectly aligned, as if someone had set them there on purpose. On the third night, the scent of burnt candles and wilted lavender drifted down the staircase. The wind chime on the porch tinkled though the air was still. The knocking above began to quicken, like the giant heartbeat of the house itself. I turned on every light. It only made the darkness in the attic hatch seem deeper. As I stared upward, the narrow gap appeared to widen, bit by bit, like a silent mouth inviting me in. Seeking answers, I visited the oldest neighbor, the grocer at the end of the lane. When she heard the address, she froze, then whispered, "Someone disappeared in that house long ago. Police said they must have run off. But folks here believe their spirit never left the attic." Her eyes held pity and warning. I forced a smile, but a weight settled in my chest. On the fifth night, exactly 3 a.m., every light in the house died at once. Darkness swallowed everything. My phone vibrated with a message from no number. "Don't go. The door is open." Clutching my flashlight, I crept toward the stairs. Shaking, the attic door stood wide. From within, a shadow swept past like a sudden gust, leaving a raspy laugh that echoed through the house. An icy chill rushed over me as if someone had walked straight through my body. I bolted outside, shivering in the fog until dawn. When I finally dared to return, the attic door was closed tight, the new lock gleaming as though untouched. I never slept there again. The next day I moved out, abandoning all my belongings. Months later, the real estate agent texted, "Did you ever hear knocking at night? The new owners complain they can't sleep." They even recorded sounds, footsteps, and a whisper. I didn't reply, but whenever I think back, I can still hear the slow thud, thud, like someone patiently counting my breaths, waiting for the day I come home.